She was about to lose everything: her diner, her son, their home. Then 50 bikers roared into her parking lot in the middle of a storm, asking for shelter. What she didn't know, their leader owed her a debt she'd forgotten, and he never forgot his debts. The neon sign outside the Last Stop diner had been flickering for 3 weeks. Mara kept meaning to fix it, but between double shifts and her son's doctor appointments, there was never time. Never money either. Tonight, the sign finally gave up. The S in stop went dark, leaving only the Last Top diner glowing weakly against the Texas storm. Mara wiped down the same counter for the 3rd time, her eyes burning from exhaustion. The clock above the pie case read 11:47 p.m. 13 minutes until she could lock up, drive home to their 1-bedroom apartment, and collapse into bed before her alarm screamed at 5 a.m. Her son, Danny, lay curled in the corner booth, his Superman backpack serving as a pillow. 7 years old, and already he knew not to complain about sleeping in diners. That knowledge broke something in Mara every single night. The rain hammered against the windows like fists demanding entry. Highway 77 stretched empty in both directions, a black river of asphalt leading nowhere. They hadn't had a customer since 6 p.m. $4 in tips. Barely enough for Danny's school lunch tomorrow. The envelope in her apron pocket felt like it weighed 10 pounds. Red letters screamed across it: final notice. Earl Whitman, her landlord, had hand-delivered it that morning with a smile that made her skin crawl. 72 hours, Mara, he'd said, standing too close. Then I'm taking this place. You can work for me under new terms. The way he'd looked at her left no question what those terms would be. She shoved the thought away and started counting the register. $214 for the entire day. The rent was $3,000. She was drowning, and the water was rising faster every. The sound hit her first. A low rumble that shook the windows. Then another. And another. The rhythmic thunder of engines growing louder, closer, until the entire diner seemed to vibrate. Mara's hands froze on the cash drawer. Through the rain-streaked windows, she saw them. Headlights. Dozens of them, cutting through the storm like wolves' eyes in the dark. The motorcycles rolled into the parking lot in a coordinated wave, their engines creating a symphony of controlled power. 50 bikes. Maybe more. Her heart hammered. She'd heard stories about motorcycle clubs on this highway. The Steel Serpents. They ran guns, drugs, protection rackets, or so people said. Last year, a bar owner 3 towns over had refused them service. They'd found his place burned to the foundation. Danny stirred in the booth. Mom? Stay there, baby, Mara whispered, her voice steadier than her hands. Just stay there. The engines cut off one by one, leaving only the rain. Through the window, she watched them dismount, leather-clad figures moving with military precision. Then the door opened. He walked in first. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a face carved from stone and eyes that had seen things Mara couldn't imagine. Rain dripped from his leather jacket, which bore a patch, a steel serpent coiled around a skull. The words, Steel Serpents MC, curved above it. Below, President. Behind him, the others filed in. Men and women, all wearing the same patch. They filled the diner, water pooling on the checkered floor, none of them speaking. The leader's eyes swept the space, taking in everything, the flickering lights, the tired waitress, the child in the booth. When his gaze landed on Mara's face, something changed. His jaw tightened. His eyes widened just slightly, as if he'd seen a ghost. We need shelter, he said. His voice was gravel and whiskey. And food. We can pay. Mara's hand moved to the phone behind the counter. The sheriff's number was taped right there. One call and what? The sheriff would take 30 minutes to arrive, if he came at all. These people would be long gone. Or worse, they'd still be here, and she'd have made them angry. Besides, she needed the money. God, she needed the money. Coffee's fresh, she heard herself say. Kitchen's still hot. I can do burgers, breakfast, whatever you want. The leader nodded slowly. Coffee for everyone. Then we'll order. He gestured, and his people moved to the tables and booths with surprising courtesy, removing their wet jackets, speaking in low voices. It wasn't what Mara had expected. No shouting, no demands, no threats. But the tension was there, coiled beneath the surface like the serpents on their backs. She poured coffee, her hands shaking only slightly. The leader, she heard someone call him Jax, sat at the counter, watching her. His stare made her uncomfortable, not because it was predatory, but because it was searching. Like he was trying to remember something. You work here long? He asked. 5 years. I own it. Sort of, the words came out before she could stop them. Why was she telling him this? Sort of. The bank owns most of it. And the landlord owns the land. She set his coffee down. Why? Jax didn't answer. He just kept staring at her face, and Mara felt something cold slide down her spine. Did she know him? Had she seen him before? Then the diner door slammed open again. Earl Whitman stood in the doorway, rain-soaked and furious, the sheriff right behind him. Earl's eyes went wide when he saw the motorcycles outside, then narrowed when he spotted Mara behind the counter. Well, Earl said, his voice dripping with false cheer. Looks like you're doing good business tonight, Mara. Shame you're still $3,000 short on rent. The sheriff, a pot-bellied man named Frank Dowd, hooked his thumbs in his belt. His hand rested near his gun. These people giving you trouble, Earl? Not yet, Earl said, walking deeper into the diner. He looked at the bikers with open contempt. But the night's young. I'm sure this trash will find a way to cause problems. They always do. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Jack set down his coffee cup slowly. When he stood, he seemed to fill the entire space. We're just here for food and coffee. No trouble. That right? Earl stepped closer, his confidence bolstered by the sheriff's presence. Well, this is my property. And I say. Mara Clemens, Jack said quietly. Earl stopped. Mara froze. That's your full name, isn't it? Jax's eyes hadn't left her face. Mara Elizabeth Clemens. You testified in Austin. 6 years ago. Juvenile court. The memory hit Mara like a physical blow. The courtroom. The scared kid in the defendant's chair. The corrupt cops lying on the stand. She'd been a witness, pure chance, wrong place, wrong time, but she'd told the truth anyway. Had it been 6 years? It felt like a lifetime. How do you, she whispered. Jax's face softened, just barely. That kid you saved? That was my baby brother. Marcus Carter. He's in college now, studying engineering. Because of you. The diner went silent except for the rain. Earl's confident smile faltered. The sheriff shifted uncomfortably. And Mara realized that everything was about to change. Earl recovered first, but his smile was tighter now. That's a real touching story, but it doesn't change facts. Mara owes me $3,000. She's got until tomorrow night, or I'm seizing this property. Tomorrow night? Mara's voice cracked. You said 72 hours this morning. I changed my mind. Earl pulled out a document, slapping it on the counter. See, I've got a buyer interested in this land. Wants to put up a truck stop. Real business, not some failing diner. Sheriff Dowd here will oversee the eviction personally. The sheriff nodded, his hand still near his gun, eyes on the bikers. Jax picked up the document, reading it slowly. His jaw worked as he scanned the terms. This says you can claim the property if she misses one payment. That's not standard lease language. It's what she signed, Earl shot back. I was desperate, Mara whispered. My husband had just died. I needed a place for Danny and me. I didn't read the fine print. Convenient, Earl's eyes glittered. But a deal's a deal. You've got 24 hours, Mara. Come up with the money, or pack your bags. Both of you. Danny had woken up now, watching from the booth with wide, frightened eyes. Mara saw him and felt her heart shatter all over again. The sheriff stepped forward. And you bikers, I want you out of my town by sunrise. We don't need your kind here causing trouble. We're just eating, officer, said a woman with silver hair and a serpent patch. Her name tag read Diesel, that against the law. Don't get smart with me, Sheriff Dowd's face flushed red. I know what you people are. Drug runners, thieves, trash on wheels. You think those patches make you tough? You're nothing but. Careful, Jax's voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a blade. We came here for shelter and food. We're paying customers. If you want us gone, you'll need a better reason than not liking how we look. The sheriff's hand moved to his gun. Every biker in the room stood up. The movement was synchronized, silent, and absolutely terrifying. 50 people rose as one, their eyes locked on the sheriff. Nobody reached for a weapon. Nobody had to. Sheriff Dowd's hand froze. The color drained from his face. We don't start fights, Jax said softly. But we remember who does. Earl grabbed the sheriff's arm. Come on, Frank. Let them eat their food. They'll be gone by morning anyway, he turned to Mara with a cruel smile. And so will you, sweetheart. Unless you want to discuss those alternative arrangements we talked about. They left, the door slamming behind them. Mara's legs gave out. She caught herself on the counter, breathing hard. The bikers sat back down, but the tension remained thick in the air. Jax returned to his seat at the counter. What alternative arrangements? Nothing. It's nothing, Mara couldn't look at him. She grabbed the coffee pot with shaking hands. Your food will be ready soon. Mara, his voice was gentle now. What did he mean? She poured coffee, watching it splash into cups, focusing on anything but his eyes. He said if I couldn't pay rent, I could work it off. At one of his other properties. A place outside of town, she swallowed hard. He owns it's not the kind of place where they serve food. Understanding darkened Jax's face. I see. I told him no. I'll figure something out. I always do, the lie tasted bitter. She'd been telling herself that for weeks, but the truth was she had nothing. No savings. No family. Nowhere to go. Jax was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to where his crew sat. They leaned in as he spoke, too low for Mara to hear. Heads nodded. Someone handed him a wallet. He returned to the counter and placed $500 bills next to his coffee cup. That's for the food. For everyone. Keep the change. Mara stared at the money. I can't accept this. It's payment for services rendered. You're feeding 50 people in the middle of a storm. That's worth every penny, Jax's eyes held hers. 6 years ago, you stood in a courtroom and told the truth when lying would have been easier and safer. Those cops threatened you. They had power, badges, guns. You testified anyway. My brother was 15 years old, and you saved his life. I just told the truth, Mara whispered. Yeah, Jax's voice was rough. Most people don't. Most people look away, stay quiet, protect themselves. You didn't. He pushed the money toward her. Marcus is in college now. Full scholarship. He's going to be an engineer, build bridges. Because you gave him a future. Tears burned Mara's eyes. $500 doesn't solve my problem. I know. Jax glanced at Danny, still watching from the booth. But it's a start. And Mara? You won't face Earl alone. I pay my debts. I don't need. Yes, you do. His voice was firm but kind. And we're staying. Outside, thunder rolled across the Texas sky. Inside the Last Stop diner, something shifted. An alliance formed in coffee and rain and old debts remembered. Mara didn't know it yet, but she just gained 50 guardians. And Earl Whitman had made a very dangerous enemy. Mara served 50 burgers, 60 eggs, and enough coffee to fill a bathtub. By 2 a.m., every biker had eaten, the dishes were done, and the rain had softened to a drizzle. Jax paid in cash, another $300 on top of the first 5. For the late hours, he said simply. Mara wanted to refuse. Wanted to maintain some dignity, some independence. But Danny needed new shoes, and the electricity bill was overdue, and pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. Thank you, she whispered, pocketing the money. The bikers filed out into the night, engines rumbling to life one by one. Mara watched through the window as they spread across the parking lot, some sitting on their bikes, others leaning against them. None of them left. Jax was the last one at the counter. We'll stay until morning. Make sure no one bothers you. You don't have to. I know. He stood, zipping his leather jacket. But we will anyway. Lock up behind us. Get some sleep. Where will you go? He smiled, just a little. We're right outside. Anyone comes near this place, will know. After they left, Mara locked the door and carried Danny to her beat-up Honda Civic. He mumbled something about motorcycles in his sleep. She drove the 10 minutes to their apartment, constantly checking her rearview mirror. The apartment was dark and cold. She'd turned the heat down to save money. Danny barely stirred as she tucked him into bed, still wearing his clothes because it was warmer that way. Mara sat at their tiny kitchen table and counted the money. $800. It wasn't $3,000, but it was more than she'd had in months. She could pay the electricity bill. Buy groceries. Maybe even. The brick came through the window at 3:47 a.m. Glass exploded across the living room floor. Danny screamed. Mara grabbed him and pulled him into the bathroom, her heart hammering, fumbling for her phone. The brick lay in the middle of her living room floor, wrapped in paper. She didn't need to read it to know what it said, but she did anyway. Get out or burn. Her hands shook so hard she could barely dial 911. The operator said someone would come by in the morning to file a report. Morning. Not now. Not when her son was crying and glass covered their floor and someone had just threatened to burn them alive. She tried the sheriff's direct line. It rang and rang and rang. No answer. Mara held Danny close, both of them shaking, and waited for dawn. The sun rose pale and weak. Mara hadn't slept. She'd spent the night sitting with Danny, every sound making her jump, watching the broken window like something worse might come through it. At 6 a.m., she loaded Danny in the car and drove back to the diner. She had nowhere else to go. The steel serpents were still there. Some slept on their bikes, others sat in small groups drinking coffee from thermoses. When Mara pulled up, Jack stood from where he'd been sitting on the diner steps. He saw her face and knew immediately. What happened? She told him. The brick. The note. The sheriff who wouldn't answer. Her voice cracked halfway through, but she refused to cry. Not in front of Danny. Jax's expression went cold and hard as steel. He called over Diesel and another biker, a massive man with a scarred face. They examined her car, and found all 4 tires slashed. Fresh cuts, Diesel said. Maybe an hour old. They were here, Mara breathed. While I was inside with Danny. They were right outside. Not anymore, Jax's voice was like gravel. And they won't be again. I should call the police. The sheriff works for Earl. You call the police, you get Earl's man. Jax crouched down to Danny's level. Hey, kid. You like motorcycles? Danny nodded, wide-eyed. How about you help my friend Diesel fix some tires? She's the best mechanic in Texas. Diesel grinned, her tough exterior softening. Come on, little man. I'll teach you how to change a tire. It's like surgery, but louder. Danny looked at Mara, who nodded. He took Diesel's hand and walked toward the bikes, glancing back every few steps to make sure his mom was still there. Jax stood. Earl's sending a message. He thinks he can scare you into submission. He's right, Mara's voice was hollow. I'm terrified. Good. Fear keeps you alive, Jax looked out at the highway. But you're not alone now. We stay until this is finished. Why? The question burst out of her. Why do you care? One testimony 6 years ago doesn't mean. You gave my brother his life back, Jax interrupted. His childhood, his future, everything. Those cops would have buried him in the system, destroyed him before he turned 16. You stood up when no one else would. His eyes met hers. In my world, that debt doesn't expire. A sheriff's car rolled slowly past the diner. Sheriff Dowd behind the wheel, staring at the bikers with obvious hatred. Jax waved at him. The sheriff didn't wave back. He's going to try to arrest you, Mara said. Let him try. Jax's smile was cold. We don't start fights. We finish what others begin. The sheriff came back at noon with a warrant, or what he claimed was a warrant. Loitering, he announced, waving a paper. You've been on this property for 12 hours. Time to move along. Jax read it carefully, then handed it back. This is signed by Earl Whitman, not a judge. It's not worth the paper it's printed on. Sheriff Dowd's face went purple. You calling me a liar? I'm calling that paper invalid. Jax's voice remained calm. We're paying customers. Check with the owner. Mara stepped forward, her fear pushed down by something stronger, anger. They bought food. They can stay as long as they want. The sheriff leaned close to her, lowering his voice. You're making a big mistake, Mara. Earl owns this town. These bikers will leave eventually, and then where will you be? Right here, she said, surprised by her own steadiness. Running my diner. Sheriff Dowd left, but his threat hung in the air like smoke. Diesel approached Jax once the sheriff was gone. We need to talk. Privately. They moved to the edge of the parking lot. Mara watched through the window as Diesel showed Jax something on her phone. His expression darkened. When they returned, Jax gathered his core members, Diesel, the scarred man called Reaper, and a quiet woman named Ghost. They huddled at a corner booth, speaking low. Mara brought them coffee. What's going on? Diesel looked at Jax, who nodded. I did some digging on Earl Whitman. He owns Whitman Salvage and Scrap, about 15 miles south. On paper, it's a legitimate junkyard. And off paper? Mara asked. It's a chop shop. Stolen cars come in, get stripped for parts, and disappear. He's probably moving $500,000 in stolen vehicles every month. Diesel pulled up photos on her phone. See these trucks? They're supposed to be hauling scrap metal. But the weight's all wrong. They're carrying complete vehicles, covered with tarps. Reaper leaned forward. We could tip off the state police. With what evidence? Ghost's voice was barely a whisper. Anonymous tips get ignored. We need proof. So we get proof, Diesel said. Jax was quiet, his eyes distant. Mara recognized that look. He was planning something. No, Mara said suddenly. Whatever you're thinking, don't. Earl's dangerous. If he finds out you're investigating him. He already knows we're here, Jax interrupted gently. The question is what we do about it. That night, 5 bikers rode south to Whitman Salvage. They wore plain clothes and trucker caps, riding in a borrowed pickup instead of their motorcycles. To anyone watching, they were just workers coming in for a late shift. Diesel had the cameras, tiny things, no bigger than buttons. Ghost had the lockpicks. Reaper had muscle in case things went wrong. They slipped into the junkyard through a gap in the fence that Diesel had spotted on satellite images. The place was massive, acres of crushed cars, shipping containers, and industrial equipment. And in the back, hidden behind a wall of stacked vehicles, was exactly what they expected, a warehouse filled with stolen cars in various states of disassembly. Diesel planted cameras in 3 locations. Ghost photographed VIN numbers and license plates. Reaper kept watch. They were almost out when the lights came on. Well, Earl Whitman stood at the warehouse entrance, flanked by 6 men carrying tire irons and baseball bats. Didn't expect visitors tonight. Behind Earl's men, Mara saw something that made her blood run cold. They'd blocked the exit with a forklift. And near the back wall, one of Earl's men was lighting a torch. See, I knew you biker trash would try something, Earl continued. So I had my boys keep watch. Now you're trespassing on private property. The sheriff will understand when I say it was self-defense. The man with the torch moved toward a pile of oil-soaked rags. Diesel's hand moved toward her jacket. Don't, Jax said quietly. Not yet. Earl laughed. Smart man. You know you're outnumbered. Tell you what, leave town tonight, forget you ever met Mara Clemens, and maybe I'll let you walk out of here. Or? Jax asked. Or this place becomes your grave. The torch touched the rags. Fire bloomed, spreading fast across the oil-stained floor. Then Mara heard it, a scream from inside the warehouse. A voice she didn't recognize, young and terrified. There's someone in there, she shouted, though she was still at the diner, watching through binoculars from the roof. She was on the phone with Diesel, who'd given her a number to call if anything went wrong. Diesel's voice crackled through the phone. Say that again? Southwest corner, 2nd floor window. I see movement. Someone's trapped inside. The fire spread faster. Through the window, Mara saw a figure, a worker, probably one of Earl's own men, locked inside accidentally or deliberately. Jax didn't hesitate. He ran toward the flames. You idiot! Earl screamed. Let him burn. But Jax was already through the door, disappearing into the smoke. Reaper and Ghost followed. Earl's men stood frozen, uncertain whether to stop them or run. The building groaned. Something inside exploded, probably a gas tank. And Mara, watching from miles away through binoculars, prayed harder than she'd ever prayed in her life. Jax emerged from the flames carrying a young man over his shoulder. The kid couldn't have been more than 19, unconscious but breathing. Reaper and Ghost stumbled out behind them, coughing, covered in soot. Earl's men had fled. Even Earl was gone, his truck roaring away into the night, leaving his own worker to die. By the time the fire department arrived, the warehouse was gone. But the cameras had survived, waterproof, heat-resistant, and hidden in the structural beams outside the main building. Everything was recorded. The young man's name was Tyler. He woke up in the hospital confused and grateful. He'd been locked in the upstairs office as punishment for talking about quitting. Earl had forgotten about him when the fire started. Or maybe Earl hadn't forgotten at all. Mara met them at the county hospital, her Honda somehow still running despite the slashed tires that Diesel had temporarily patched. When she saw Jax, his leather jacket burned, his hands wrapped in gauze, his face streaked with ash, something inside her broke open. "You could have died," she said, her voice shaking. "He would have died," Jax nodded toward Tyler's room. "Kid's got a future. Wasn't going to let Earl take that. You don't even know him." "Don't have to," Jax winced as a nurse adjusted his bandages. "Some things you do because they're right, not because they're smart." The nurse, an older woman with kind eyes, finished wrapping his burns. "You're lucky these are mostly second degree. Any deeper and you'd be looking at skin grafts." She glanced at Mara. "Your husband's got more courage than sense." "He's not," Mara started, but the nurse was already gone. They sat in silence for a moment. The hospital hummed around them, machines beeping, distant voices, the antiseptic smell of trying to keep death at bay. "My husband died 3 years ago," Mara said quietly. "Construction accident. At least, that's what they called it." Jax looked at her, waiting. "He was working on one of Earl's properties. A apartment complex Earl was building on the cheap. They cut corners on safety equipment, used substandard materials. Miguel, my husband," he complained. "He told the foreman the scaffolding wasn't secure." She swallowed hard. 2 days later, the scaffolding collapsed. Miguel fell 4 stories. 3 other men were injured, but Miguel was the only one who died. Earl covered it up. Earl paid the families. Made them sign NDAs. Threatened to have them deported if they talked. Mara's hands clenched in her lap. Miguel was documented, but his crew wasn't. They had families to protect. So they stayed quiet, and Earl got away with it. But not you. I tried. I went to the sheriff, to the labor board, to anyone who would listen. Her laugh was bitter. Turns out Earl owns all of them. The investigation concluded it was worker error. Miguel's fault for not securing his own harness properly. She looked at Jax, her eyes fierce despite the tears. He always secured his harness. Always. Miguel was careful because he had a son to come home to. Jax's jaw tightened. That's why Earl wants your diner. You're a loose end. A reminder of what he did. I'm a witness who didn't stay quiet. Mara wiped her eyes. And now he wants to erase me completely. They sat in the hospital waiting room until dawn. Diesel brought coffee and news. The cameras had captured everything. Earl's men loading stolen cars. The accounting books in the office. Even Earl himself, caught on film saying, "Get rid of the evidence and anyone who saw it." "We've got him," Diesel said. "State police, FBI, doesn't matter who we send this to. Earl's done." But Jax shook his head. "Not yet. If we release this now, Earl runs. We need him to feel safe, to think he won." "So what do we do?" Mara asked. Jax looked at her, really looked at her, and Mara saw past the leather and scars to the man underneath. Someone who'd lost everything and built a family from broken pieces. Someone who understood what it meant to keep moving because stopping meant remembering. "Tell me about the house fire," she said softly. His surprise showed for just a moment. "How did you? You flinch every time someone mentions burning. And you don't stay anywhere long. The diner was supposed to be one night, but you're still here." She moved closer. "What happened?" Jax was quiet for so long Mara thought he wouldn't answer. "Then, I was 18. Marcus was 10. Our parents were landlords, good ones, the kind who fixed things and charged fair rent. One of their tenants couldn't pay. Said he would, just needed time." He stared at his bandaged hands. "The tenant's boss was a real estate developer who wanted our building. Offered to buy it cheap. My parents refused. The fire wasn't an accident. Arson investigator said faulty wiring. But I know what I smelled that night. Gasoline, his voice cracked. I got Marcus out through the bedroom window. Went back for my parents. The stairs collapsed. I couldn't, he stopped. They died because they believed in doing right. Because they wouldn't sell to a man who wanted to turn low-income housing into luxury condos. Mara took his burned hand carefully. So you ride. So I ride, he agreed. Never staying still. Never putting down roots. Because roots burn. Until now, Mara said. He looked at her, and something passed between them, understanding, recognition, the shared knowledge of loss and survival. Until now, Jax repeated quietly. Outside, the sun rose over Texas, painting the sky in shades of fire. They returned to the last stop diner at sunrise to find it vandalized. Spray paint covered the windows, condemned, the front door hung crooked on its hinges. Someone had shattered every light fixture they could reach. Danny stood beside Mara's car, staring at the destruction with tears streaming down his face. Mom, our diner. Mara couldn't speak. This was it, the final blow. Even if she somehow got the rent money, Earl had made sure the diner was unusable. She'd have to close anyway, spend thousands on repairs she didn't have. She'd lost. Jax walked slowly around the building, examining the damage. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Yeah, it's me. I need the crew. All of them. Bring tools. Within an hour, 30 more bikers arrived. They came on motorcycles and in pickup trucks loaded with equipment, power tools, lumber, paint, light salvaged from the junkyard before it burned. What are you doing? Mara asked. Rebuilding, Jax said simply. I can't pay you. Didn't ask you to. He handed her a cup of coffee someone had brought. You fed us when you were scared. You opened your doors when you had every reason to keep them shut. Now we return the favor. They worked like a coordinated army. Diesel and her crew fixed the electrical system, running new wiring through walls. Reaper and the construction-experienced members replaced the broken door and boarded up shattered windows until new glass could be installed. Ghost, surprisingly, turned out to be a talented painter. She covered the graffiti with primer, then started mixing colors. What's your favorite color? Ghost asked Danny. He looked at his mom, who nodded. Blue, he said shyly. Like Superman's cape. Blue it is. By noon, the diner was transformed. The outside gleamed with fresh paint, blue accents against white walls. The broken sign was gone, replaced with a hand-painted banner, Mara's Place, open for business. Inside, the bikers had done more than repair. They'd improved. New booth cushions salvaged from abandoned diners. A better stove from the junkyard, cleaned and restored. Even a small TV mounted in the corner so Danny could watch cartoons while his mom worked. Mara walked through the space, touching everything, unable to believe it was real. There's more, Jax said. He led her outside where Diesel stood beside a motorcycle trailer. Inside were boxes of food, industrial-sized containers of coffee, flour, eggs, meat. Where did this come from? We know people. Distributors who owe us favors. Restaurant suppliers who appreciate our protection. Diesel grinned. Consider it a donation. You've got enough here for 3 months, easy. I don't understand, Mara whispered. Why are you doing this? A woman biker with gray streaks in her hair stepped forward. 10 years ago, my daughter ran away. Ended up in a bad situation. Your husband, Miguel, he found her sleeping behind a dumpster at one of his construction sites. He didn't call the cops. He called me. Sat with her until I arrived, bought her breakfast, talked to her about second chances. The woman's eyes glistened. I never got to thank him. So I'm thanking you. Others came forward with similar stories. A biker whose brother Miguel had hired despite a criminal record. Another whose mother Miguel had helped when her apartment flooded. Story after story of small kindnesses, forgotten by Mara but remembered by them. Miguel never told me, Mara said, overwhelmed. Good men rarely do, Jack said softly. By evening, word had spread through town. People who'd never set foot in the Last Stop diner came to see what was happening. The bikers invited everyone inside for free food, burgers, coffee, pie that Mara made from her grandmother's recipe. Families came. Workers from nearby factories. Even the Baptist church ladies, initially scandalized by the motorcycles, softened when Diesel helped them carry plates. The diner filled with laughter for the first time in years. Then Sheriff Dowd arrived, his face twisted with rage. This is an illegal assembly. I'm shutting this down right now. On what grounds? Jax asked calmly. Health code violations, no permits for renovations, public nuisance. Actually, interrupted a woman in a county inspector's uniform, I did a full inspection this afternoon. Everything's up to code, she showed her badge. Inspector Chen, County Health Department. This establishment passes with flying colors. The sheriff's mouth opened and closed. You can't, Earl said. Earl Whitman doesn't sign my paychecks, Inspector Chen said coldly. The county does. And I don't appreciate people trying to bully honest business owners. Diesel casually pulled out her phone, aiming the camera at the sheriff. We're live streaming this, by the way. Got about 3,000 viewers right now. Want to say anything about Earl Whitman? About how he operates? The sheriff's face went white. He looked at the crowd, at the cameras, at the bikers watching him with cold eyes. This isn't over, he muttered, retreating. But everyone knew it was. As the sheriff's car disappeared down the highway, Diesel turned to Jax. The video goes live tomorrow morning. Every news station, every social media platform. Earl's empire collapses in 24 hours. Jax nodded. But his eyes were troubled, scanning the horizon. Mara saw it too. He'll run. Or he'll fight, Jax said quietly. And Earl Whitman doesn't fight fair. The video went live at 6 a.m. By 7 a.m., every news station in Texas was running the story. By 8 a.m., the FBI had issued a statement about opening an investigation. By 9 a.m., Sheriff Frank Dowd was in custody, arrested by state troopers on charges of corruption and evidence tampering. Earl Whitman's empire crumbled in real time. His bank accounts were frozen. His properties were seized. Business partners who'd looked the other way for years suddenly remembered incriminating conversations and rushed to cut deals with prosecutors. But Earl himself had vanished. Jack stood in the diner's parking lot, phone pressed to his ear, coordinating with contacts across 3 counties. White truck, Texas plates. Last seen heading toward the border, he listened, then cursed. Keep looking. Mara brought him coffee. Maybe he's gone for good. Maybe that's enough. It's not, Jax's voice was hard. Men like Earl don't just disappear. They regroup, rebuild, come back harder. And they always go after the people who hurt them first. Meaning me. Meaning you, he looked at her. We need to find him before he finds you. The call came at noon. Reaper, breathless and urgent. We found him. Route 90, heading west. But Jax, he's not running. He's circling back. Toward your old safe house in Millerton. Jax's blood went cold. The Millerton safe house was where his crew stored equipment, cash, and supplies. More importantly, it's where some of the bikers' families stayed, wives, children, the people they protected. He's going after our families, Diesel said, overhearing. That son of a bitch is going after our families. Within minutes, every biker was mounted and ready. Engines roared to life like thunder. Mara grabbed Jax's arm. "I'm coming with you." "No. Stay here with Danny. You'll be safe." "He wants me, Jax. If you're not here, he'll come here anyway." Her eyes were fierce. "And I'm done hiding." There was no time to argue. Jax made quick calls, left 3 bikers to guard the diner and Danny, then pulled Mara onto the back of his motorcycle. "Hold tight." They rode. 50 motorcycles screaming down Highway 90, weaving through traffic, pushing engines to their limits. The Texas landscape blurred past, scrubland and sky and endless asphalt. Mara had never been on a motorcycle before. The speed terrified her, but Jax's presence was solid, steady. She held on and tried not to think about what they'd find. They caught up to Earl 20 miles outside Millerton. His white truck was speeding, swerving recklessly. And in the truck bed, Mara saw it, red gas cans. At least a dozen of them. "He's going to burn it," she shouted over the wind. "Just like your parents' building." Jax accelerated, pulling alongside the truck. Earl saw him and jerked the wheel, trying to force him off the road. Jax swerved, dropped back, let Diesel and Reaper flank the truck from the other side. They were hurting him, Mara realized. Forcing him away from populated areas, toward empty desert where he couldn't hurt anyone else. Earl must have realized it too. He slammed on his brakes suddenly, sending the truck into a spin. Metal shrieked. Rubber burned. The truck flipped, rolling 3 times before crashing into an embankment. The motorcycles stopped in a semicircle. Engines idling. Waiting. Earl crawled from the wreckage, bleeding from a gash on his forehead. His expensive suit was torn and dirty. He looked nothing like the confident landlord who'd threatened Mara just days ago. He looked like what he was, a cornered animal. "Stay back." Earl pulled out a gun, waving it wildly. "I'll shoot. I swear I'll." "No, you won't." Jax dismounted slowly, hands visible. "You're not a killer, Earl. You're a coward who pays others to do his killing. I built this town. Everything here exists because of me." "You exploited this town," Jax corrected. "You stole from it, corrupted it, destroyed anyone who stood in your way." Earl's gun hand shook. "You don't understand. I came from nothing. I worked for everything I have. People like you, people like her." He gestured wildly at Mara. "You want to take it all away because you're jealous." "We want justice," Mara said, stepping forward despite Jax's warning look. "For Miguel. For Tyler. For every person you hurt because you could." "Justice?" Earl laughed, a broken sound. "There's no such thing. There's only power. And I had it. I had everything." His face crumpled. "I can't go to prison. I can't, they'll destroy me in there." "You destroyed yourself," Jax said quietly. "The moment you chose greed over humanity." Earl's hand steadied. The gun rose, pointing at Mara. Time slowed. Jax moved, but he was too far away. Diesel reached for her weapon. Then Earl's hand turned, the gun moving from Mara to himself. "No." Jax lunged forward. But Earl didn't pull the trigger. He just stood there, sobbing, the gun falling from his shaking hand. "I can't. I can't even do this right." Reaper kicked the gun away. Diesel pulled out her phone, already calling the state police. Earl collapsed to his knees in the dirt, broken and defeated. "It's over," he whispered. "It's all over." Jax picked up Diesel's phone and turned on the video recording. "Then tell the truth. Every bit of it. Miguel Clemens. The construction accident, the bribes. All of it." And Earl, with nothing left to lose, did. He confessed everything. The sun climbed higher as they waited for the police, Earl's voice droning on, admitting to years of crimes. When the state troopers finally arrived, they had a confession that would put Earl away for decades. As they loaded Earl into the patrol car, he looked at Mara one last time. "I'm sorry," he said. Mara didn't respond. Some apologies came too late to matter. The bikers mounted up and rode toward the sunrise, their engines echoing across the empty Texas plains like a chorus of steel angels. 3 months later, the last stop diner barely resembled the flickering, desperate place it had been. The new sign, professionally made this time, read, "Mara's Stop, Home for All Riders," in bright blue letters. The parking lot had been repaved. Fresh paint gleamed on every surface. Inside, the booths were full nearly every hour of operation. Mara wiped down the counter, smiling at the morning rush. Truckers, families, businesspeople, and yes, bikers. They all came now, drawn by good food, fair prices, and the story that had made national news. The waitress who stood up to corruption. The bikers who became heroes. It was the kind of story people wanted to believe in. Danny sat at the corner booth doing homework, a small leather jacket draped over the seat beside him. Diesel had given it to him last month, child-sized, with a miniature steel serpent's patch on the back. He wore it everywhere. The bell above the door chimed. Mara looked up and felt her heart skip. Jax walked in, followed by a dozen of his crew. They came every Sunday now, regular as church. More reliable, actually. "Morning," Jax said, settling onto his usual stool at the counter. "Morning." Mara poured his coffee without asking, black, no sugar, exactly how he liked it. "The usual?" "Please." She'd learned his patterns over the past months. He always ordered the same thing, eggs over easy, wheat toast, hash browns. He always left a generous tip. He always made sure to talk to Danny before he left, asking about school, about baseball, about the things 7-year-old boys cared about. And he always looked at her like she was something precious. It terrified her, that look. Because she was starting to look at him the same way. While his food cooked, Mara pulled out the envelope she'd been carrying all morning. "This came yesterday." "The settlement." Jax raised an eyebrow. "Earl's assets. The judge ordered them liquidated to compensate his victims. Miguel's case was reopened, ruled wrongful death. They awarded us $300,000, her voice shook slightly. Danny's college is paid for. The diner's mortgage is gone. We're free." "That's good," Jax said softly. "That's really good, Mara." "There's more," she set another paper in front of him. "The property Earl owned, the land this diner sits on. It was sold to pay his debts." "Who bought it?" "According to the county records, a company called Serpent Holdings, LLC." She looked at him steadily. "Want to tell me about that?" Jax had the grace to look slightly guilty. "I couldn't let some developer buy it and kick you out. I know you've got money now, but you bought it first. Before the settlement came through. When I still had nothing." Mara's eyes filled with tears. "Why?" "Because you deserve a home. A real one, that nobody can take away." He met her gaze. "I'm not asking for anything, Mara. The deed's in your name. It's always been yours. I wanted to make sure you were safe." She wiped her eyes quickly, aware they had an audience. Half the diner was pretending not to listen while absolutely listening. "You're staying in town," she said. It wasn't a question. Jax had rented a small house on the edge of town last month. The Steel Serpents had established a legitimate motorcycle repair shop nearby. They were putting down roots, something Jax swore he'd never do again. "Yeah," he admitted. "Turns out some places are worth stopping for." Danny ran over then, launching himself at Jax with the fearlessness of a child who'd never been given reason to doubt he was wanted. "Jax! Did you see? I got an A on my math test." "That's great, kid." Jax lifted him onto the stool beside him. "What did I tell you about fractions? That they're like pizza slices. If you cut the pizza into 8 pieces and eat 3, you ate 3/8 of the pizza." "Exactly. Now you're thinking like an engineer." "Like Uncle Marcus?" "Just like Uncle Marcus." Marcus had visited last month, a tall, serious college student who'd hugged Mara so tightly she couldn't breathe, thanking her over and over for saving his life. He'd spent hours talking to Danny about science and building things, planting seeds of dreams in a little boy's mind. The breakfast rush began to thin. Diesel and the others finished eating and filed out, leaving Jax alone at the counter. He looked around the diner, at the families eating together, at the laughter and warmth, at the life that had bloomed in this place that once represented only struggle and fear. "You did this," Jax said quietly. "You took something broken and made it beautiful." "We did this," Mara corrected. "I couldn't have survived without you." "You would have. You're stronger than you know." He paused, then reached across the counter and took her hand carefully. "But I'm glad you didn't have to." His hand was warm, calloused from years of riding and fighting and surviving. Mara looked at their joined hands and thought about roots. About how sometimes they don't burn, sometimes they grow. "Stay for lunch?" she asked. Jax smiled, a real smile, soft and genuine, the kind that transformed his whole face. "Yeah. I'll stay." Outside, the Texas sun climbed higher, burning away the last of the morning clouds. The highway stretched endlessly in both directions, but for the first time in years, neither of them felt the pull to run. Danny came back with his colored pencils, settling between them to draw. "What are you making?" Mara asked. "A picture of our family," he said simply, sketching a diner, a woman, a boy, and a man with a motorcycle. Mara and Jax exchanged a look over his bent head, surprise, wonder, possibility. "Family," Jax repeated softly, testing the word like it was something precious and new. Mara squeezed his hand. "Yeah. Family." And in that moment, with the diner full of life and laughter, with her son drawing pictures of belonging, with a man who'd ridden 1,000 miles to escape his past finally finding peace, Mara understood that this wasn't just about shelter from a storm. This was home. The first real home any of them had found in years. And it was worth every fight, every fear, every moment of courage it took to get here. "You know," Jax said, breaking the comfortable silence, "this place really was my last stop." Mara smiled. "No. It's the first one that ever felt like home." He looked at her, and something passed between them, gratitude, affection, and the beginning of something deeper that neither was quite ready to name. But they had time now. All the time in the world. Outside, a motorcycle rumbled past on the highway. But this time, Jax didn't watch it with longing. He was already exactly where he wanted to be. The end.